This is the Old Farts, otherwise known as Adventures in Technology. We'd like to take a moment to remember Steve Osten, a longtime panel member who died last week. Steve was a well-read, moderating presence on this show. He was an active member of the Reading community, and he will be missed. Okay, a moment. All right, starting this month's version of Old Farts, and we were just kicking around literally a moment ago. Um, some of the things that have been happening actually in the last 24 hours in the Middle East. Um, One thing was, well, in the previous couple of weeks, the Houthi rebels who basically control Yemen at this point have been attacking ships that they think are going to or coming from Israel in support of Hamas. Uh, there was a headline today. Some of the members of the panel have read it. I haven't. Where the where armed forces of U.S. and Great Britain went after the Houthi launch sites where they were launching their rockets and their drones, etc. Um, at the same time, in the Gulf of the Persian Gulf, there was a seizure of a oil tanker by groups who are thought to be, we don't know for sure, but thought to be um, members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Uh, since we don't know who it is, it's hard to be sure what the motivations are. But it gives some idea of what's happening today in the Middle East. And we were kind of kicking around the idea of talking about why this is being done and what the implications are. So open it up to the panel.
I was going to say that we need to understand there's a long-term background behind all this stuff what is happening in Israel, in the Middle East, and what I think is that because of growing influence of Iran and the Middle East countries in the other countries in the Middle East have realized that the better way to deal with with the forces that Iran controls is to align themselves together as a group of Muslim countries that are mostly Sunnis against the Shia Iran. And in order to do that, they formed the alliance along with Saudi Arabia, the major force, and aligned with the United States with the Abrahamic Accords so that they could get together and take advantage of the presence of Israel so far as jobs and technology and everything else is concerned. And because of that alliance, I think it has made the Iranian groups more restive, including Hamas. And that is what I think must have been brewing over the couple of years to show to kind of take a revenge on that kind of background that about the different countries joining together, joining forces, decreasing in consequence the influence of potentially influence of Iran. So that's how I think Hamas has come up with the October 7 attack strategy. And now this is where we are now because of that. And naturally, Iranian supporting Houthis are involved. They support whatever can harm Israel and U.S. interests. And naturally, it is escalating because of that. That's my piece with it.
Uh, Paul?
No, I was just trying to grasp the ideas. And let me take my glasses off. It's easier to,
That helps me to think too.
well, no, it doesn't help me to think because I can't see very well. But so I don't know. I just see it as a an overall um, strategy that's been going on for centuries. And currently it just happens to be, you know, the news is about Israel, but it's basically just um, these groups are declaring, jihad against whoever, and so I see it somewhat different, but it's still, you know, turmoil in the Middle East.
Hmm.
That's the bottom line. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things I was going to add was uh, you can look at what happened on October 7th, the Hamas attack on Israel that was done as much for the publicity of it as anything else, as being a response to the Abraham Accords uh, and their widening. The Abraham Accords was about a year and a half ago, uh, and it was essentially a recognition by some of the leading Arab countries that the just arbitrary being angry at Israel was counterproductive and that more could be gained economically, politically, even by by cooperating, by trading, by exchanging technologies and things. And it's begun to expand. And as of about 3 months ago, what am I saying? As of probably September, Saudi Arabia, the biggest dog in the fight, was actually um, negotiating some kind of an accord with Israel. And it can be seen as being normalization. It can also be seen as a Iranian alliance, as all of these countries have one particular thing in common, and that is they fear or are angry or dislike, for whatever reason, Iran. And that the Hamas battle could be seen either as you're forgetting about the Palestinians, so we're going to make sure that you keep us in mind, or it can be seen as Iran telling their proxies in Gaza, um, make a fuss. Uh, and then, of course, other Iranian proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis, et cetera, um, are supporting Hamas, but effectively they're creating the kind of chaos that um, might help Iran. Uh, that's another way of looking at what we're facing right now.
There is,
Does
there
anyone
is
have any idea how, the population of Saudi Arabia? Iran is 80 million, I guess. Is that correct? And
I
I don't know.
I don't know actually. I should know this. But what I was going to
yeah,
say is
because
that, yeah, go ahead.
I,
What I was going to say is that given that the Iran is mostly Shia, they have had their share of ISIS attacks recently,
mm,
because the ISIS folk are the Sunni, and they think about Shia to be as an existential threat and to be eliminated. And this is kind of interesting when you listen to all the rhetoric that comes out of those groups. They consider Shia as also in certain circles to be agents of Israel. It's kind of a strange thing when I hear that. I wonder what is going on in their head because they consider them to be so against the gospel they believe in that they need to be eliminated. And so you have, and as Paul pointed out, this is just recent 1300 years old history, but that Middle East has richer history beyond that and turmoil at the same time. So I don't think these are newer versions of the turmoil and conflicts, and I don't see an absolute solution in the near future. Doesn't matter which religion comes up there.
Well, remember, Europe had 100 to 200 years of brutal wars
Yep.
between the Protestants and the Roman Catholics.
Yep.
Um, it's not unique to Islam.
Mhm.
Um, by the way, the answer to your question, Paul, is 33 million in Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And,
Um,
and Iran is what, 40 million? No.
Paul said 80 million a moment ago. Is that
Yeah, I thought I heard 80. Maybe that's all of Shia. I don't know.
uh,
No, no,
I can
that's
try to get an
I
answer.
I thought her I
I'm
don't
sorry,
know.
go ahead.
Um,
81, 82 million.
at any rate, I I thought they were you know, the they were just fighting each other, and they'd been doing that for centuries, and um, you know, they they seem to have after the Second World War, they seem to have a united front that they wanted to get the Jews out of quote Palestine or Israel. And after the Second World War, that's what um, the World Court decided a place for Jewish people to go, and it was back to Israel because that's where they were, to begin with. So that it seems like there's is that conflict that there is no end to it. Um, the Jews are going to stay in Israel, and the I guess that the Muslims are trying to kick them out. They kicked them out once, and uh, they said they've done it once. Let's do it again. And
Uh, Actually, it was the
that's
Romans who
why
kicked them
it
out.
was the Romans actually.
Yeah,
was it
well
the Romans?
before Muhammad. It was
Oh, okay.
in 70
Oh,
CE.
70 AD. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Uh, but yeah, again, I will say this over and over again. If I get to choose when history starts and the scope of what we're analyzing, I can justify almost any action.
Well, now you got to throw in Russia in there as well,
Right.
and then try to solve it.
Right. Russia sees the groups that are anti-Iranian as natural allies.
Mm-hmm.
So they will support Iran, and Iran is, by the way, sending Russia weapons because they can't produce enough on their own. They in North Korea and a few other countries, not too many. Um, so we're forcing an alliance which might or might not have existed before. Again, based on you hate these people, I hate these people. Let's be friends.
I
Yeah.
mean,
I, I
you look at the Iran Anglo-Soviet alliance invaded Iran one time,
Mm-hmm.
and right now they are friends. It's kind of how the switch happens. It's kind of frightening and funny at the same time.
for
Paul was going to say something, actually.
America spent 40 years fighting England. Uh, England was their primary enemy.
Yeah.
And then 10 years later, England encouraged them, and we did the Monroe Doctrine, primarily to keep France and Spain from taking back all the colonies in South America. And we've been friends ever since. It would be I think, a very, very bad idea for countries to remember forever that they were once angry at somebody without reevaluating uh, periodically to see whether the world has changed. So, and I think that's
It
in
kind of
part.
reminds me of a song. I can't remember who sang it. Maybe it was the Kingston Trio or something, but there was you know the it was talking about the world. You know, the rioting in Africa, the strife in Iran, uh,
Hmm,
and it ended with if what nature doesn't do to us uh, will be done by our fellow man. You know, someone will set the spark off, and we will all be blown away.
yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. Uh, and even, well, another example, we were talking about people fighting and then becoming friends. Iraq and
Mm,
Iran did like an 8 or 10 year war,
Yeah.
and the United States was sponsoring Iraq, and it finally ended kind of in a stalemate. And 10 years later, Iraq is basically a Shiite country. It's Shiite run,
But
mm,
it has
and
majority Shiite
yeah,
population, and
eh,
statements by, if I understand it right, Iranian I don't know whether he's the president or who he is. I don't know what his designation is. The big power in Iran. He talks about look what happened to look what happened to um, uh, the uh, the president of Iraq because of the treachery of the United States. Look what people did to him.
mhm,
And because he was authoritarian, he was doing his own thing. And look how how he was treated, and he died in a bad situation. So kind of a strange uh, way of interpreting their view of history as far as Saddam was concerned.
yeah, and the United States, because our belief system is that people should govern themselves, and if you're a majority of something, then that's who the government should be. We allowed Iraq, which had been run by the Sunnis, even though it was a majority Shia country, to become Shia run, forgetting the fact that they would more likely associate with Iran, even though they had fought a bitter war for 10 years. And most of the Gulf states are, if not Shia majority, certainly damn close, including Saudi Arabia. The Shia are the majority in the oil producing area,
Yes.
which may explain why Saudi Arabia is so absolute in their belief that the Shia should be eliminated or kept away.
Well, the Shia are not, as far as I have heard, are not treated well in the Saudi kingdom by the Saudi kingdom.
Oh,
Although
okay.
they hold good jobs and they run the industries, but then treatment wise, they are kind of second class.
Hmm.
So that's what I've heard.
Which is uh, a reason why at some point they may object to the way things are.
Mhm. But
Um,
but given the powers are Sunni and the Sunni folk are controlling the religious sites, that what they say goes.
Hmm. Okay.
That's the reason there. Reasoning, I guess.
It would be interesting to see who were the soldiers in the army.
That's
Because
interesting. I don't
if
know.
they're Shiite and they get some leadership, there could conceivably be a change in power.
Well, the kingdom does not tolerate dissidents, so
Right.
and even within their own clan, so you have a not a good record of that.
True.
But
So,
but but overall, it's Middle East solving Middle East in the short run, as Paul pointed out, is not that easy, and it has long-term consequences for the whole world, actually.
hmm, well, I was going to ask, given that the United States and Britain have retaliated for the attacks on commercial shipping, uh, what happens now? Do the Houthis go after American ships, which they haven't till now, not directly? Do they go after bases outside? Do they go after with something other than drones? I don't know what else they have. Certainly, I would think that the status quo in Yemen might be changed. And does the United States go after Iran directly?
I think directly going into Iran I don't think it is as good, will be a good strategy, but I'm not the person sitting on the hot seat there to decide. But I would think that uh, they, of course, what is going to happen, as was pointed out again by Paul, that there can be a united front put together by invoking invoking the 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 attack on Islam as a watchword, so that all the Sunnis and Shiites come together. And that's another danger there, but you never know. But I think the better strategy is to go into Yemen and get rid of all these Houthis who are creating problems, get rid of all their weaponry and neutralize that. That way, Iran will know that there are folks who mean business.
Well, if I hire somebody to do a job and I don't care what happens to them, I care only that the job be done. Uh, let's say, for example, let's assume that the Houthis were hired by Iran to mess up shipping in the Red Sea, and the U.S. attacks and destroys the Houthis. Uh, does Iran really care? They have Hezbollah, they have groups in Iraq, they have groups all over the Middle East, if not further out. Do they just hire another group? I mean,
That's a danger there. But at
you
the
know,
same time, if they get the message that anybody they hire are vulnerable, and then nobody may volunteer. You never know. But
you know,
given the history of jihadists, that's another difficult thing to predict.
no, I agree. I was thinking, I have not seen any headlines, so I don't know. But Hezbollah, which is based in Lebanon and
Mhm.
actually is part of the government in Lebanon, has been making noises about attacking Israel. And if they decide to attack Israel and go after other U.S. bases in the area, other U.S. Bases or friends or whatever, um, do we then go in and destroy Hezbollah or authorize our friend Israel to go in and do the same. It would be a tough battle. There's hundreds of thousands of Hezbollah soldiers and sympathizers.
Mhm.
And do we really want Israel to invade and conquer Lebanon? And does Syria say, okay, a step too far? And does Jordan get dragged into it? Or Egypt for that matter? Uh, we've had
What
region-wide wars already over the past 80 years. I don't think we're ready for another one. I don't know. The U.S. was not directly involved in the others. They would be now.
Well, you remember during Reagan time, we had troops stationed in Lebanon. I don't know if they are still there or not.
I, I think that I think there are, but I don't know. I know that the barracks were destroyed,
Mhm.
and supposedly Iran was the sponsor of it, and we didn't do anything. We
No,
didn't
we
do it.
didn't do
We
anything at
didn't
that time.
do anything similar.
Mhm.
We may have done other things because it didn't repeat itself. So maybe Iran got the message. Um, I don't know. I do know that
yeah.
Reagan, before he was elected, was very much involved with the Iranians, and even after he was elected, was selling arms to the Iranians.
That is what people claim that they were negotiating with Iranians to delay the release of hostages. And of
Right.
course, we don't have much proof of that, but there are these reports that show up. But at the same time, there was that investigation about the North and other things about other people about the arms for there was a
Arms for
name to that
hostages.
arms for hostages, and
Yeah.
that came out. So
Hmm.
that was brought out. But so that means there was negotiations with Iran going on, but how far they agreed on all these different terms, I don't know. And I don't know whether that came out, what was supposed to be the outcome other than Sandinista home.
Well,
Was that before or after the Shah?
that was after.
Because I'm sorry?
That was after the Shah was deposed under Carter,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
and under Carter is when the embassy was stormed and taken, and those were the hostages. Um, I think it was 78, uh, somewhere in that area. If it was
It
1978 or not, I'm
was,
not sure.
I don't remember what the year was. Oh, that's not good. I don't remember what the year was, but it was not good.
Yeah.
That did Carter in.
Well, that cost him the election.
Yeah.
That and the attempted rescue that went awry.
Yes.
Obviously, he had been successful as a rescuer. He would have been a hero and would not have had a problem, but it didn't work.
Yeah, that was a bad operation. The way it was carried out looks like they did not. Well, I shouldn't say any of that because I was not there. We don't. I have no idea how they did it, but it did not work.
Right.
Mm.
Um, they didn't even get to Tehran. If I remember
My
correctly,
question was
yeah.
when Reagan was trying to negotiate with Iran, did he have the feeling that the senior guy there, um, I don't know what he's called, not
The
the Shah,
Ayatollah,
but
the Grand Ayatollah.
Yeah, the
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Khomeini and
Did he have the
his.
feeling that that guy was willing to talk as opposed to be opposed to the United States?
Well, obviously they talked because the hostages released the day Reagan was inaugurated. B, the U.S. then began selling arms to Iran. And I thought there was a third thing, but let's just play with those two. Whatever the deal was before Reagan was president, almost immediately after he was president, we started selling them arms and doing it secretly without telling Congress.
Okay.
And then the money that they got was used to fund the Sandinistas, which they also didn't bother to tell Congress about.
That became a big mess.
Yeah.
Oliver North saga.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. He was the one who was running the operation.
Yeah.
It's amazing how we forgave and forgot things that for which multiple presidents since then have been pillared. Trump was impeached for doing a great deal less than that.
But that was Reagan because and of course Oliver North became a hero in the eyes of the certain groups.
Yeah.
And I think he still is. So
I don't know if he's still alive, but
I don't know that he's alive, but
yeah,
the
assuming that he is.
thought of Ollie North is still there.
Right. And for a while, he had a successful, I don't know if it was, well, they didn't have podcasts back then. He had a successful media presence.
Yeah, I think radio talk show or TV. I forgot
Yeah.
what was it. One of these two.
Right. So it was okay. You know, the worst thing that happened was he got caught.
Yeah, that's it.
And I guess he stood up and protected Reagan to the extent that Reagan was not brought in formally.
Yeah, I mean, when Reagan was, I forgot why, excuse me, why Reagan was brought into later on when he said he doesn't remember any of that. He didn't remember. A lot of his answers was he didn't remember. So
Yeah.
that's the end of that.
Well, it turned out he had Alzheimer's.
Yes.
But it's a good excuse if you're relatively old. I use it all the time. Anything I don't want to admit to, I don't remember.
Oh, good. All right. So Reagan was right.
Yeah, it worked. He was a very, very popular president. And what can I say? So what do we think Iran's going to do given the attack on the Houthis, which hopefully will sideline them? Do they license Hezbollah, which has been sort of sitting in the background? A fair percentage of the population of northern Israel was evacuated almost immediately after October 7th. And there have been rockets going back and forth and attacks of one kind or another. But so far, Hezbollah has not done much of anything except being a mosquito.
Aren't Hezbollah folk Sunni or are they Shia?
I have no idea.
No, okay. I have not
It sounds
researched
like
that.
they're Shia because of they're getting all their stuff from Iran, not from Saudi Arabia.
But is Hamas Shia? Because most of Gaza is Sunni.
Yeah.
So
And that is the dilemma there.
Yeah.
How is it that that Iran can do all that because they want to create trouble?
Mhm.
They want to create an atmosphere where they are perceived as the dominant force. I mean, you have to recognize, as far as I can think, Iran has been at war with Western powers forever. You read about the history, the Greco-Roman, what is it, the Iranian wars with the Greeks and all that. That it was going on for a long time, and so the destruction of Persepolis was also done through by the Greeks. So they probably think about this as the long-term uh, troublemakers have been the Western powers, and they can't take it. So I
Well,
don't know how much
yeah,
of that plays into their historical mindset, no
but
matter who it
yeah,
is.
they're the only country in that area that remained independent. Certainly after Alexander the Great,
Mhm.
and I'm not an expert in Iranian history, so I may be wrong, but I think they were an independent country ever since. So that's what, um, certainly more than 2,000 years.
Yes.
Uh, Now, there may have been um, run by other groups by proxy. Um, the Shah was basically an American proxy.
Mhm.
Certainly was seen that way. Whether how independent he was, I don't know. But before that, the British were the dominant force, but it was not a British colony. That's the distinction I want to make.
Yes.
Uh, as a result, they may see themselves as independent. They may see themselves as in a constant war with Western powers. Not that Greece, I think, would be considered a Western power, but at one point, it was dominant in that part of the world.
Well, the other piece, what I know is that they pride themselves on having preserved the Persian culture
Yeah.
and not adopted the Arabic things, because although they were invaded, but they were never conquered by the Arabs. And so that they stayed with their language, their culture, their poetry, and all the philosophy. And so that way they kind of pride themselves on that piece. And that is another thing that probably gives them a fillip that to to kind of declare themselves as the ones in the Middle East who are the grand poobah.
Hmm.
But they but the reality may be something else.
Well, at one point before the Shah fell, the U.S. was promoting that.
Yes.
They were very much in favor of it. As a matter of fact, I remember this probably goes back to the middle 70s. Uh, I was negotiating for a job in Iran.
Wow.
Uh, it didn't happen,
Mhm.
and I'm basically very happy that it didn't. But at the time, it sounded like a very cool thing. And it would have been a very interesting way to live your life. You were required to have Iranian servants. I don't know
Wow.
if they were supposed to be informers or not, but you had to have servants, and they
Wow.
had to be Iranians, and it, it would have been a different way to live.
Wow. So you would have been a
Well,
little
especially
shocked.
considering your heritage.
Well, yeah, the minor detail there, but at the time that wasn't an issue. I don't
Right.
think. Um, I mean, it didn't happen, but I had gotten to the point where I was doing a little bit of research to see what life would be like. Uh, it was nice to be a programmer back then.
Mm.
Shah did have an outlook to modernize Iran
Yes.
in the sense the way we think what modernization means. But when you listen to the current folks there, they look at that and say, previous governments, they don't name the Shah, previous governments were taking us away from our cultural and religious roots, and they made our country to be degraded. And now we are bringing that culture back and rooted in our heritage, rooted in our religion. So now we are real Iranians, something like that. But
If you
then you listen to the regular Iranians at the common folk celebrating, for example, the winter solstice. Is that winter solstice? Yeah, or one of the 21st of December. There's a festival they celebrate,
Mhm.
and they talk about how there are a lot of restrictions in place to celebrate the event, although they still celebrate it. And they talk about how previously, I thought that they meant before the current government. It was much more liberal and we were doing lots of celebrations, but now there are restrictions on what we can do and what we cannot do. So I thought that was interesting hearing it from common people.
well, think about it for a moment. Take the word Iranian out of that and put MAGA in, and
Oh,
you got the same situation going on.
yeah, I didn't think of that.
And oh,
That's
by the way, it's not just the United States.
yeah.
Um, the second leading power in France has a similar attitude. Um, we're reactionary as a world. We want to go back to the way things were when everything was right, for at least me. The rest of you don't care much. But me, everything was right back then. And I want to go back to that.
That is interesting. Yeah, that's what lots of nations are going towards that. That we want to set the record straight because history, as taught to you, is not the correct history. I will tell you what the correct history is, which is I hear the on TV evangelical folk talking about that,
Mm,
and I hear that back in India, same thing. The
right.
history we have been taught is not correct. We will tell you what is correct.
Well,
We will read, no, not only that, we will rewrite the history.
well, they're doing that in Florida.
That's what
Uh,
they're doing. Yeah.
if something that you want to talk about makes some group that I like as opposed to another group uncomfortable. There was slavery, yeah, well, yeah, but it wasn't all that bad. I mean, look at all the skills that these people got, and their backs are so much tougher because of the scars. Um, it's the same kind of thing, and I, I guess it's normal. I guess everything goes in a cycle.
Yeah.
Um,
The worst part about it is that their denial of things not happening at all, and it's just it's just very, very frustrating that people are um, so ignorant of the past that they won't accept what's in the history books,
they're not
and they want to
ignorant; they just
rewrite the
don't like it.
history.
They don't like it. Yeah, there was a civil war. It wasn't about slavery. It was about states' rights to do whatever they wanted, which in large measure was have slaves. Um, and what happened afterwards, the Jim Crow, etc. It wasn't that bad. Um, and
That's what
God forbid that there should be gay and lesbians or transgenders and etc. etc. You go on. It's kind of funny. I was just reading that one town in Florida took the dictionary out of the library because there were bits in there that talked about, sex, and sex is evil, necessary but evil. I
Yeah.
grew up in the South, and I can remember where sex was original sin. And the reason why you need to be saved is because you were born, the process by which you were born was sinful. And that sin carried on to you. And the only way to get rid of it is to be saved.
So is the dictionary banned now?
Hmm?
It is
In that
has
one
it,
town, I have the feeling it was sarcasm. I
I see.
don't know
Okay.
that. I remember seeing the headline, and I didn't have time to read the article. But if you think about it, there are towns, again through sarcasm, that ban the Bible in the library
Oh,
because there's a
that's interesting.
lot of sex in there.
Yeah. If yeah, if Adam and Eve didn't have any children, then they would have died off, and all the animals would have been happy.
Probably. I'll give you another one. Adam and
Yeah.
Eve had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain
Yeah. Where
got
did the
killed.
girls come from?
Abel got killed. Cain went off. So they had a third son. Okay, everything's cool up to that point. But then that third son had a whole bunch of children. Are we missing something somewhere? Like another female, or was Eve doing her duty to populate the world?
No, no, they just appeared.
Oh, okay. All right. I just
Oh,
wanted to check
okay.
it out.
Okay. That's an interesting thing. I never thought of that. Wow.
And I apologize to anybody who might be listening. I didn't mean to get into that level. It's just having lived through a time in my life where these things were implied, but God forbid, never talked about.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, time to change the subject
Yes.
from that one.
Before you change the subject, are those the good old days?
For some people, yes.
Oh, I
The
see. Okay.
1950s.
Ah.
The economy was going great. People were making decent money. Um, TVs. I was reading an article yesterday where the households that had TVs tripled during the 1950s. Uh, it used to be that a wealthy household might have a car. By the 1960s, people were living in the suburbs and cars were a necessity, so households
Mhm.
had cars. It was a good time to be alive. They still believed in the old time religion, at least in portions of the country. Um, if you weren't a white Protestant, things weren't necessarily as good, but we don't talk about them at all anyway. So what difference does it make? They were happy. So yeah, if you look, that's really what they're talking about. The fact that a lot of kids got polio and either died or in iron lungs for their life, the rest of their
Mhm.
life. Um, they solved it by vaccines, and now we don't want vaccines because they could be dangerous for some people.
So they would not have vaccine, then you can allow the polio to come back.
There, there was a movement. I remember this is before COVID,
Mhm.
where it was becoming bigger and bigger that people did not want their kids to be vaccinated, and schools were requiring that you go in, you got to be vaccinated because
Mhm.
there's some groups because of allergic reactions or other reactions
Mhm.
couldn't be. And if you got sick, you were going to get them sick. But if the herd immunity, it was unlikely that anybody would get
Mhm.
sick. And so therefore they would be protected. but there was a strong movement. I can't remember where it was big. I thought it was California, but it may have been somewhere else. And then when the COVID thing came up and people were saying you have to be vaccinated, they were saying, no, you can't force me to be. And they're still litigating that. Some people in the,
Well, you know, if you don't get vaccinated, you can choose to die, of COVID or get
yeah,
very, very sick,
uh, I, despite
you know.
what friends of mine who are angry at the government for forcing vaccinations said, they said, they said if you got vaccinated, you wouldn't get sick. And yeah, people still got sick. And in fact, what they said was if you get vaccinated, you're less likely to go to the hospital and even
Mhm.
more less likely to die.
And that's what vaccines should do.
Right. But that's not what they're saying was said back in 2000 and whatever, 2021. Uh, and
And still now,
yeah,
and
interesting.
still now.
Yeah. The Oklahoma National Guard, people were required to get COVID vaccine, and a bunch of people are suing, and the cases are going up. I think one may be going to the Supreme Court soon,
Wow.
uh, saying they shouldn't be required to have gotten the COVID vaccine. Yet, when they signed up, they were required to have certain level of vaccines, and if they were ever deployed anywhere, they had to be vaccinated against diseases that were
Yes.
prevalent in the area where they were going to be deployed. And there's been no objection to that. It was only the COVID one.
Yeah, strange because there are diseases prevalent in various parts of the world where the American troops are deployed and they get vaccinated actually for
Mm-hmm.
various diseases and they are given prophylactic pills, not only vaccines.
Yeah. Because if they don't get it, A, they'll get sick, and B, they will not be effective soldiers. So it's hurting the unit, the group.
Yeah, they
Uh,
can be efficient folk on the ground.
right. So the my understanding of the defense of the government saying you don't have to be vaccinated. You have to be vaccinated if you are a member of the National Guard. You don't want to be vaccinated, quit. Well, there are places, or there were places where you had to be vaccinated, like in a hospital. But again,
Mhm.
you could quit.
Yeah, I mean that's a choice there. Yes.
So, but going back when we didn't have to be vaccinated, life was better.
Well, you have
Life was better before the COVID came into the world,
Okay.
right? You know, and when it did, you should have been vaccinated so that you weren't one of the millions who died
Right.
because of it.
Yeah. I agree. I know I got COVID a couple of months ago, and I'm reasonably sure I got it at a wedding. And I'm reasonably sure that some of the people at the wedding had not been vaccinated because
Oh,
they're anti-vaccine.
I see.
I had a very mild case, very mild case.
Thank
Um,
God.
Mm.
so I'm very happy, but not everybody I know that had mild cases.
I mean, even now there are COVID cases and people are dying because of COVID,
Yeah.
because some of the individuals who are high risk and
Mm-hmm.
have not been vaccinated, they are dying. And also some people who have been even vaccinated and
Right.
at high risk are susceptible to death. So
Right.
what can you do?
I know a situation. This goes back a couple of years. Um, a friend of my friend went and had dinner with some friends of theirs. The friend of my friend that had been vaccinated was up to date on their stuff. The other people had not been vaccinated. The friend of my friend got COVID, went to the hospital, and died. My friend got COVID from them, and he went into the hospital. He came out, and he's fine. But these are people who were vaccinated, and it happens.
Mhm.
If I went and I got the flu shot, which I probably am going to get in the next day or two, I've had it already, but this would be an update. No guarantee I'm not going to get the flu. It's
Yeah.
less likely that I will go to the hospital.
Yes,
But
you need
it's
the
also
you
less
need.
less likely that you'll die of the flu, like
Mhm.
my uh, what is it, great grand uncle.
Mm,
Um, he was, you know, the epitome of masculinity. He was 6'2", 210, and did labor and died of avictoria flu in 2017. Oh,
Wow.
1917.
okay,
And
yeah.
that's still around. That's the flu shot we get.
Yeah.
That's the strain of the flu. Is that correct, Omanan?
No,
There are multiple strains running around every time because that's what I don't know
Yeah.
which strain is right now because they decide the vaccine production several months before the actual strains show up. It's a guess they make based on the prevalence of strains in Far East.
Mm.
Kind of
But I
interesting.
mean,
It's a
what we
committee that
normally
sits down.
call what we normally call the flu shot is a derivative of the one in 2017, isn't it? Is that correct?
I don't know whether that's a derivative of that or not, but as I know, what I know is the every year the flu shot that is created is based on the strains, the viral strains that they see prevalent in the Far East and assume that will show up here.
Mm.
And sometimes they miss, and that's when flu shot is not effective because they have guessed wrong.
hmm.
And this time they're saying they have guessed somewhat right, and I'm hoping that is true.
Is it HV1? We were Paul was asking what the current strain is.
No, HP, that's, see, the flu strains are based on the H and N
Ah,
numbers. H and N, H1,
HN.
N1, HN,
Okay,
H3, H1, N3, like that. There depends on what strain that is. And whatever strain is prevalent at a certain time and assumed to be spreading, that's what they make the vaccine against.
okay. Well, let's hope that they did a good job.
And this time I have read that they have done a good guess. So
Well, do they really know until March or April?
well, they test actually. That's what they have tested at. The data, some of the data are already out. That's
Mm.
what based on that they are saying
Ah,
the vaccines should be better effective because current strains are whatever the strains are. I don't remember the strains right now.
okay. No, uh, it's scary. There's so much going on that we at best can just be aware of.
Mhm.
I have zero control.
Yeah, I mean there are virologists who are experts based on what they have studied and epidemiologists, and that's their best guess some certain times, and they sometimes miss. Miss means doesn't show up. So what can you do? But
No.
still, there is some cross reactivity of the strains of the shots vaccines. So there is some protection even then.
Well, yeah,
Mm.
they were saying for the current COVID that it does protect you from the one that was really viral. Um, the second strain that was
Mhm.
killing so many people.